This one's the interesting one. Dawid Malan. Now, I've got 9 separate bullet points on this little document. There's a lot going on about Milan. Scores are 24 not out in the first game, 24, 18, 14, and 68. Now, the scores aren't necessarily the crucial factor here. Realistically, I probably should have written the amount of balls he came off these innings, but I know for a fact the first 4 combined were 80 off 77, I think. So let's split it into 2. We had the Dawid Malan of the first 4 games and the Dawid Malan of the 5th game, and that is very much the story of his role within this side and the way that he plays.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I think obviously he done well in the 5th match. Obviously he crumbled a bit after his 50, but kind of got us off to a reasonable start. But I just don't think it kind of makes up for the 15 off 17, that kind of thing that kind of completely kills you in kind of building a total or chasing. Obviously you don't want to kick a man while he's down. I think he probably deserves a few more games at least at number 3. But yeah, he's pretty uninspiring, obviously, and it's just a case of, if he's going to be 15 off 17, you'd probably rather have Stokes move up to 3, or even someone like Hales or Root. Obviously 2 very different players, but I don't know what I don't know. There's obviously the issue of him being number 1 batsman in the world, which is nonsense, but I just don't know with him. I'm still not sure either way, but I think I'm more leaning towards he's more of a hindrance than a help for us at the minute.
Yeah, it's such a risky approach the way that he plays, because if you had either Stokes or Root or any of these other players who you could move up to 3, probably they're not going to go at the strike rate that Malan goes once he's been in for 20 balls, once he's got set. But you could be pretty confident that none of them would ever be 15 off 16 at the end of a power play, or 12 off 12, because that's where it really costs us. And it's such a tough one, because on one hand you've got the quickest bloke ever to 1,000 T20I runs, and the game's been played for 16 years now. We've been playing T20Is, probably been played seriously for 10 years. So he's no mug. Like, he's a good player, the quickest ever to 1,000 T20 runs. And there's 2 ways to look at it. This guy's good, which he is, or he's been good with an element of fortune and luck. And I would go with the latter one, really. He's massively overperformed his domestic stats, and what even he thought he would be capable of. His general T20 career is an average of 33, a strike rate of 128. His England average is 50 plus, and his strike rate is 144. Even before this series, it was 150 plus. Now, I know numbers don't always tell. There's a whole story, there's context and stuff to it, but all his best performances have come in an England shirt, and he's been really good in those center conditions: South Africa, England, New Zealand, Australia. But I think we've now seen that run of form he put together in the first, it would have been 19 games before this tour, was never going to be sustainable. And we've started to see a couple of chinks in the armoury, particularly in Indian conditions. And that's the key thing in Indian conditions, because that is where the World Cup is going to be held.
Yeah, I think if it was in Australia and we were kind of warming up in Australia, it'd be a completely different story. But there is that adage of, like, if Malan gets in and gets going, then he's going to win you the game. Well, he got going in the 5th and kind of got out after he got to 50. So it's a case of, like, it's been all downside so far, in that you get a runnable knock up to about 17 balls and then he gives it away. But the one time he kind of did accelerate on, he didn't win the game. And it's a case of of course, if it was in Australia, he seems to me like, kind of on a flat pitch, he is your number 3, because he just seems to be able to kind of play good strokes up top that go at a decent rate. But yeah, especially in India, he's been struggling. It's weird, because if it was the Australian World Cup coming up, it would be like, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. And
no, we'd be debating someone else completely. Yeah. Like, someone else's position would be under threat. Malan would be really easy. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. On the 5th track yesterday was the best track of the surface. That's why 400 plus runs were scored on it. And it's no surprise that if you subscribe to the theory that Malan's good on flat tracks, that's why he looked so good yesterday. And he was fed, some pretty ordinary short stuff in a power play to get him off to a decent start by Hardik Pandya, which is where his deficiencies have usually lied, in the power play. If he stays in the side, is it maybe a case of England having to be a bit more proactive with deciding whether they put him in the power play, depending on where we lose a wicket, whether we have to move him down the order, or does that just completely undermine his position within the side if you're thinking that your number 3 isn't going to come in when you lose the first wicket?
I think if you're kind of if you're kind of protecting one of your top 5 or 6 batsmen from a situation in T20 cricket, it's probably not the best. I don't think you can go into a game thinking, oh, we've got to protect Malan, or what if he comes in the power play. I think guys like, especially on a flat track, but then you'd probably say Alex Hales is probably a better option on a flat track, or in difficult conditions you probably back Joe Root over. It's kind of, you're not quite sure where he does fit in, and whether you do need to kind of change your lineup to suit him, which obviously England probably aren't going to do given kind of riches we have in batting. Yeah, I would say this series has probably been a 5 out of 10 for him, and I don't think that's harsh.
No, I think there's a massive weight on that fifth game has pulled him way up there as well. Even that fifth game, it was good to see him in some form. You want him to do well. You don't want him to not perform. But I don't think it was sort of the triumphant, up yours, I can still do this, that a couple of people are making it out. Because realistically, at the end of the day, he did. It sounds harsh to bag the guy who top scored with 68 or 46, but he did still slow down after the 50. Didn't see it through, didn't go big, and I know part of that was his partnership with Joss Butler, but he was still scoring at just over 8 runs and over in a chase that required 11, nearly 12. Well, especially 12 after the first over, the way we played it. So it's a tough one. England almost need to. I'd be intrigued to know what his numbers are chasing compared to setting a total. I feel like he's a man who would thrive without the pressure of a score to chase down. I think his 100 against New Zealand came in the first innings, didn't it?
Yeah, I just don't know what more you can say on him. I guess it's a tough one. It's going to be interesting to see. I don't know where are our next T20s. I'm not actually sure, but wherever they are.
Yeah, I think we're playing at home, aren't we, against Pakistan and is it Sri Lanka? I don't know.
I think so, but either way, it's going to be interesting to kind of see which way we go.
Yeah, well, that the series that are coming up in England, I think yesterday actually Morgan said he's expecting and anticipating that he won't have most of his bankers, most of his best T20 players available. So that will be an interesting one. That'll be a good test. I know it's in completely foreign conditions to the Indian World Cup that we're going to see, but there's probably going to be chances for the likes of Malan. You probably end up seeing Malan, Billings, and maybe even Livingston all in the same team, and then at that point it just becomes a straight shootout between them all, and it might end up all sorting itself out. Who knows? Maybe we'll come to the World Cup in October, November, and nothing will have changed, and we'll turn up and win it anyway.